Hi, Deann. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, John, and thank you for the kind welcome.
My pleasure. I was looking through your Amazon page, and I know we're here to talk about the book that's right there beside you, and we're going to get to that for sure. But before we do, I'd like to know a little bit more about you, where you're from, and what your background is, and tell us all about yourself.
Okay, this is the hardest part. It's easy for me to talk about my stuff, but now we get to me. My name is Deann D. Mathews, and I am from San Francisco, California. My background is in professional journalism. I was a professional copy editor for the Bay Area news group here. However, they downsized, and that released me to take all my public communication skills and go write some books. And so that ended up being, in addition to some other things, I write every day now, do some editing, some coaching, a bunch of different things. But I would say I would describe myself now as major creative because I am able to do more and exploring all the aspects of my creativity. And obviously, I am a crypto investor, and this is how that happened.
Okay. We've all heard of crypto. I certainly have.
Mhm.
Don't know the first thing about it. In fact, I have to say, a lot of people, including myself, may be a little suspicious about it because it doesn't seem to make much sense, but other people make a lot of money that way. So tell us all about this book.
Okay, so crypto, it is a new market. That's the first thing to understand. And new markets are always small and volatile. And if you get it at the wrong time, they can really hurt you. If you were John Newton about 400 years ago and tulips were all the rage, as smart as he was, got it at the wrong time, that turned out to be a bubble. It can happen. This up here, Bitcoin is the leader of the crypto space. Back in 2009, a person or person calling themselves Satoshi Nakamoto were very frustrated by how, when large financial institutions got into trouble, the government of the United States just printed them out. But that messed up everybody else's money, and there was no transparency to the people on how this was done and who it was given to. So they essentially coded money that was hard money that could be verified by everyone using it on what's called a ledger. And because they printed, it was you had to solve a certain code to receive this money. He or they used their cryptography skills to be able to grant access to this form of currency, hence cryptocurrency. And the first of these is Bitcoin, electronic digital money. The advantage that it has is that you can go back even today, and it's called a blockchain because those big blocks of cryptography came out block by block by block. You can go back and look at every transaction that was ever made, ever. You can see who made it, where it went, where it is. You can go back. So it's open to the people. It's new and volatile, though. And one of the reasons I wrote this particular book is because it has a cycle. Remember, I said it was created in about 2009
Mhm.
ish.
Yeah.
So it has a 4 year cycle. Every year in the every 4 years in the United States, we have an election. Well, it just so happens to turn out because of when Bitcoin was created, it has a halving, and I'll explain that later. But it's a change in how much is available to be created, and then it has a run as people realize there's not going to be as much of it every 4 years, every leap year, and every year. Well, every leap year it starts up. Every year after it finishes its startup, every year it divides by two and not by four, straight down. And because people do not get invested until they're hearing that Bitcoin is at some number with lots of zeros, almost always come in late. And so I said, okay, we're not doing that. I know a lot of people who got jacked up coming in late for the 2008 financial crisis when
Mhm.
there was a house mania. So for the same reason that Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin, this is why I did this, because I'm tired of seeing retail investors not understand how this works. And it's 2024. So as we've noticed in the news, Bitcoin was kind of sitting around $20,000 when I started writing this book. It's not $20,000 today. It's about 62. And I knew that was going to happen.
Hmm.
And I could have sat back and said, well, I'm good. I'm positioned. I'm fine. I want to just sit here and collect my money and be in a situation and just do that every 2 years and enjoy my life, retire from everything. And then I said, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't have it in me to leave people when something good is going on and people are struggling, just like Satoshi Nakamoto couldn't do it. I can't either. So instead, I had to do this right here.
Hmm. Okay. Let's talk practical. Um,
Okay.
from my perspective, when I was a working person, I paid into mutual funds to secure my
Okay.
retirement. I watched it grow. Of course, I had to continually contribute to it, and they took it out of my paycheck. I opted into that program, and at the end of it all, there was a nice little package there, and I could take bits of it out and use it for various purposes, such as, purchase of this house that I live in. That was one thing it came in handy. How does that translate to the Bitcoin? What would I have to do? Invest some of my Canadian money, say $100, and
Mhm.
what do I do? Where do I send this money, and how do I work it?
Okay. This is very similar to how you would buy a stock, presuming that your mutual fund is on the Canadian stock market. And in fact, Bitcoin is in the Canadian market, I believe, as an ETF, and now available as an ETF in the United States as well. That just happened. If memory serves, Canada got out in front of us. The True North kind of led the way while we kind of dilly-dallied.
Hmm.
So if you wanted to buy an exchange traded fund on Bitcoin, you actually can do that now as of late February. In Canada, I think it was last summer.
Okay.
So that's one way of doing it. I'll come back to that.
May
So
I interject at this point? Who would I give this money to?
whatever financial institution that you have available to
Oh,
has your exchange traded fund in Canada
oh,
would be
okay.
who you
All
gave
right.
the money to.
Okay.
Now, well, since we're on the subject, since I think probably more people will come to this from the point of view of using something that's as accessible to their stock market, I'll do this first. Then there are numbers of companies that have what's called spot ETFs. They're based on the price of Bitcoin. Now, here's the thing about ETF. When you buy an ETF, you're not buying the underlying asset. Just like if you have a mutual fund, your mutual fund has the stocks and you have the fund. Same thing with Bitcoin in this sense. You're buying an instrument, a derivative, based on the value of that fund, based on the value of the asset behind it. So if you buy a Bitcoin ETF, you're not actually buying Bitcoin, you're buying stock market exposure to it. So you would send, like, I have a friend who's like, I do not have the bandwidth to learn how to do Bitcoin. Can I buy a Bitcoin ETF? I'm like, it's your money. Of course you can. So she got hers from Fidelity. She went to Fidelity, sent $100 to Fidelity, and got the ETF, and now is in position. So that's probably going to be the easiest way if you understand IRAs, mutual funds, and ETF is available. I don't recommend it though, because what you happens is however long you can buy and sell what you need. First of all, it's cyclical. We do not know if these companies, when they do their quarterlies in April of 2026, are going to want to take the hit when Bitcoin declines 70%. So they may get out of it. We don't know that yet because it's too early. They may choose to get out of it because they may sell at the top too, is what I'm really saying, in 2025 or close to it, because they're not going to want to take this drop. It will mess with their financials if they've over accumulated it.
Yeah.
We don't know yet. And then you can only trade when your market is open as opposed to owning your own Bitcoin. So what I recommend people do, if you need to do an ETF because it's easy to start with, great. But there are exchanges for Bitcoin, and you would buy your Bitcoin on the exchange and then send it to a wallet. And a wallet can be like a flash drive, which is called a cold wallet, or you can download a wallet to your computer and hold your Bitcoin there. Just like, usually your stocks and bonds have
Hmm.
someone has custody, you have self custody in
Wow.
crypto.
What's the possible downside to this?
Stay too long, stay too long. If you're familiar with the history of the 1929 crash, there was a concept of who's the biggest fool. Everybody knew there was a massive speculative bubble, but everybody kept buying it because they figured there'd be a bigger fool than them. Well, round about October, the biggest fools ended up holding the bag. There's a
Hmm.
gentleman named Jesse Livermore, after whom Livermore, California was named, one of the richest men in the world at that time, ended up being caught out there. Biggest risk in crypto, and we're talking about Bitcoin to start with, but in other coins, it can be even worse. After the cycle has completed its top, so it'll go up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times over the course of its history. But the problem is it's going to give 70 to 80% of that back as people run out of this market.
Mm-hmm.
So you buy it at the wrong time and you're going to lose 70 cents on every dollar.
Yeah.
But if you wait, so you got to determine what your style is. It'll bottom out. From what we've seen for the last 3 cycles, it will bottom out, be there for about 2 years, and then start back up again. So you've got some trading decisions to make. Do you want to kind of time when the top is going to be, get out and come back and go back up, or just if you wanted to have it as an IRA or a mutual fund, you could leave it there. But it's so volatile that you would be stressing every 2 years. That's your biggest risk on this. Learning it, steep curve. I've tried to smooth the curve out with the book. Try to smooth it out a little bit. But coming in at the wrong time, to me, is the biggest possible risk. I came into the market in 2019, 2 years late. This thing, all year, it just, but because it was 2019, 2020 was the following year. So it turned around the following year. Before a year, everything I'm doing. It's just, that's the biggest risk. If you're
Okay.
late,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that.
Well, whenever we invest in whatever, we hope to see a return on that. And if a person wants to buy Bitcoin, thinking that, well, I'll invest the so-called, let's say $1,000.
Okay.
And then it goes up, and then you see it growing, and it's $4, $5, $6,000 after a period of time. Is that a realistic possibility?
In Bitcoin, I would say because of the maturity, it is the oldest and it has the most money in it.
Okay.
I'd say 1 to 2,500 to be
Okay.
now because we have the ETFs in play now, which we did not have on previous cycles. So I do need to say that had that not happened, 1 to 2.5 with all these different companies buying Bitcoin for the ETFs, yeah, there are people talking about $6,000 and $7,000 for your one. But I'm going to remain conservative on
Okay.
this.
That's a good position.
Starting at this phase of the cycle, because there's a big change in Bitcoin that's coming next month, your $1,000 today, provided nothing like World War III,
Right.
something really go wrong in American elections, which is theoretically possible. But Bitcoin kind of ignored the last fund that we had here
Mm-hmm.
on our election too. It kind
Yeah.
of ignored it. So provided, and it kind of bounced back from COVID. So it has to be above that.
Right.
It's very mathematical. But
Right.
I'd say one because of how early people are. Bitcoin has about an 18-month. Now we're going to look at maybe a 20-month run this time. 18 months out of 2 years, 6 months, it's kind of just sitting there. When I was writing this book, it was kind of just sitting there, what they call accumulating, bouncing around. And then after that 6 months, you get something called the halving. And to make this really easy for people who are new, it takes twice as much work to mine as much Bitcoin, so only half as much of it is available, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that causes what's called a supply shock because people realize fresh Bitcoin is running out. And then if you get in before that, and the date to know is about mid-April, April 16th, generally you are positioned well. And this is why at this point I can say, okay, 2.5 times should be easy. Can't say too much beyond that because we don't know what's going to happen on the charts with all these ETFs in there. March 2024, though, and March 2025 are very different. If we got the time machine and went a year into the future, we had the same conversation, I would then have to say to you, okay, I'm going to look back at the chart and say, okay, most of that run is done. So now you put in 1,000, be content. Take your money out in September at 1,200.
I was going to ask you because you mentioned earlier that one of the downsides is staying too long. However, traditional investments, the idea is to hang in there. Like my investments, it was like 35 years. It was in the process. That's not something you should do with Bitcoin, is it?
Bitcoin is not old enough for us to be, well, at least not for my opinion. Now, okay, so there's a cycle 2024 up, and it goes up and does not come back down. So you lose 70%, but you got 30% of your gain there. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, 2028, same thing. It'll go up. If we follow the chart, you'll lose that. So you're still, if you wanted to leave it there for 35 years, you theoretically could do it,
But we
but
don't have enough
Bitcoin is
information to know
young.
whether that will work.
We don't exactly.
Yeah.
We don't have enough information. There's something called quantum computing that's coming.
Okay.
And quantum computing is the one thing that may break the cryptography on everything. Now, if that does happen, we got bigger problems than losing Bitcoin. Trust me, we got bigger problems.
Yes,
There's no
that's right.
secret, there's no password.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we don't know. So, as someone who's not a listed financial advisor in the first place, I would never advise anybody to leave anything that's this young anywhere. If I were a financial advisor and just not someone who's an expert by virtue of being in the market, I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. Because the other thing is, it's one thing if the things in your account are tried, proven, blue chip things that have been around for 100 years.
Hmm.
This is not that.
Yeah.
This is not that.
Okay. Makes me think of a colleague, a friend of mine, I suppose, when I was working at Network. He invested in what he called penny stocks, and it just
Ah,
sounded
yes.
it sounded very strange, but also made sense. So he bought into flour and sugar, usually in the spring, and then he sold those
Mm-hmm.
stocks in November because everybody's baking cakes and using a lot of flour and sugar for their Christmas delicacies, and he made a little bit of extra money.
Yes, I use chocolate for this example.
Oh.
Same thing. It's cyclical. So if you invest in chocolate, not financial advice, but just pay attention to the dates. Nobody's buying chocolate in September. But if you look at your calendar in the United States of America and basically European world,
Hmm.
and European influence world, there's this holiday called Halloween.
Ah,
So
yeah.
people are gonna buy chocolate. And then they're gonna buy more chocolate at Christmas. And well, some Thanksgiving's not a big chocolate holiday, but people will continue to buy. There may be a little dip in November. But the other thing that happens is the weather changes. You can't really ship chocolate. Like I said, my family hails from the American South. You don't want to be shipping chocolate in Texas in August. Don't do that. That's
No.
gonna be a mess for you, unless your company has a cold pack. So, but after October 15th, this is chocolate shipping season.
Yeah.
So then there may be a little bump in Thanksgiving, but then Christmas is coming, and then they'll get that, and there's going to be New Year's, and then Valentine's Day, and then this year Easter Sunday comes really early. So what you do with that is you buy chocolate in September, you sell it on Good Friday,
Hmm.
and year after year after year after year after year after year, if you buy sugar on a cycle, you're going to hit it twice because chocolate has to have sugar,
Yeah.
and somebody's going to make a chocolate cake. So again, hit it twice, and
Wonderful.
in fact, those overlap. Crypto is analogous to this kind of cyclical
Okay.
movement
All right.
of asset. Like I said, it's not something I would put away for 35 years and not look at.
Sure.
But what I teach in this book is right, just like your colleague, catch the cycles and use them. And then, take your profits in September. That's about the right time, by the way, in 2025, and buy chocolate.
Okay. So
Do that.
so let's say I go to let's say I go to my bank and I say, well, here's $1,000. I want to
Okay.
get in on the crypto on the Bitcoin market, and I follow your advice in this book. And really, what I want is $2,000 because I really want to buy an American-made Stratocaster, and $1,000
Okay.
won't do it. And then when it turns into $2,000, hopefully, if I follow everything that you say and it works, I go to the bank and say, I want out, give me my $2,000. It's that simple. Of course, I pay for their services, but I actually get the money.
If you sell your ETF, okay, so we're using a bank.
Hmm.
If you had raw crypto, you would go back to the exchange. You take your money out of your wallet, put it back on the exchange, and sell it. And there's things about stop limits and all that, market orders and all the rest. I won't go into here, but it's pretty quick. The exchange sends it to your bank, and your money is there.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's a two-step process.
Cool.
If you get an exchange traded fund, you just sell the fund while the market is open. And
Okay.
then supposedly whoever you have that fund will give you your money back. So whenever you have reached whatever your goal is, I should mention here, another way of thinking about this is dollar cost average in and dollar cost average out. Let's say
Mm.
you don't care if you have it a lump sum. Okay, I can only put in, okay, I want to put in 1,000, but I don't have it right now. So I'm gonna put in 200 this week, 200 next week, or 200 this month, 200 next month, 5 months in a row. You have time right now. It's still early. That'll still work. You'll still get there. But also, you might decide, okay, I've got some other things going on, so I'm gonna let it sit to about 2,200, and then I'll dollar cost average it out. You can also do it that way, and as long as your market is open, if you're going to a bank, if you're going to do an ETF, if the Canadian market's open, you should be able to sell your ETF, and they give you your money back.
Okay.
That should be how it works. That's generally how ETFs do work. So you just sell the fund. I will say again, you never have possession of the Bitcoin, so you never have to worry about that. You just go ahead and take your money out, sell your ETF, and move on.
Okay.
Caveat, caveat. If I was going to do that, given that, like I said, September, October, this should top out. I'm sure big bankers and their quants understand how this works. I would get out of there in August because what you want to do is get out of there before they decide they're leaving. So you have some control over the process. But by August of 2025, you should have your Stratocaster by that time, if the
Okay.
cycles hold the way they have.
All right. I live in a small town. I used to live in Toronto where I can get anything, go anywhere and buy anything just about. But here I do a lot of online shopping for things that I like that just are not available here. I've noticed in a few cases that Bitcoin is an option to pay. And
Yes.
would PayPal do Bitcoin, or is that something separate?
PayPal has added some functionality for Bitcoin. PayPal and Cash App in the United States. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what's going on in the Canadian markets, but it should be, I imagine it's available in the true north also.
Mm-hmm.
Again, same issue though. You are accessing the money through them, but they hold the Bitcoin.
Okay.
So if you want access to the money value of Bitcoin, that's a reasonable way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it does give you, that's called crypto adoption. It does give people access to use the value of Bitcoin in the world, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And and adoption, that's a whole different conversation about how people talk about, well, it's just electronic money. Your credit card is electronic money.
Yeah.
Really, if you think about it, we're already kind of used to that. But this one is transparent and also it cannot inflate, which is the major thing. So even though it's PayPal and our Cash App, and even though you don't own the Bitcoin, at least the value of that in inflationary terms is not going completely out of control. It should actually improve because there'll only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. So it should actually improve over time. Yes, that's a valid way to do some shopping and things like that. That's kind of the adoption phase of how people are actually using Bitcoin as money.
Okay. All right. Well, in our culture, we just love heroes. We love success stories. We love rich people and how they got to be rich. We love those stories. Of course, you have heard, and we've all heard about people who became Bitcoin millionaires. Is that an anomaly?
Nope, it's timing, partially. If you have Bitcoin from 2009, Bitcoin was around $80 then. It's about 62,000 now. Starting early is important. I know someone who got into Bitcoin at 9,000. It's 62,000 now. So I know of people that got in, but they caught the bottom of the COVID crash and got in at 3,000, and it's 62,000 now. So some of that is timing. And then people did really dumb stuff. Like Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy is out here telling people sell their houses to buy Bitcoin. Well, some people did that. And if you did it at the right time, yes, you were a millionaire. If you did it at the wrong time, you were a millionaire for half a minute. I don't recommend those kind of strategies. Although I know it's kind of down here in the United States, it's kind of a thing we do. I'm gonna get me a Lambo, a Lamborghini. I'm like, you haven't even paid your taxes. You know the Internal Revenue Service is coming to get all of that. Crypto is very mathematical. keeping a level head is very important. Crypto will force you to find out how emotionally intelligent you are. And if you don't have that skill, your chances of becoming a crypto millionaire on Bitcoin are small. Now, there are other things called altcoins. Like there was an altcoin called Matic Polygon. If you had bought it at the end of 2020, it was 2 cents. It went to 250, $2.50 by the end of the run. So, okay, what's your mathematics on that? If it went up 125 times, you really only needed to invest $10,000 in it, and there you are. But did you know that? How could you have known it? So, a lot of things happen because people are just early, and then they ride it up and they get out on time. So that does happen. But again, getting in early, getting out on time. That's how you keep the million. A whole lot of people were millions at the top, and then hey, bye bye. You got to know what you're doing, or
Yeah.
you just have to be super duper early.
In our two countries and many other countries as well, we have deficits, and the economy is up and down, and we worry about it, and our leaders try to do the best to even it out. But there's always some sort of problem with the finances of our countries, and sometimes I worry about that. Um, is Bitcoin part of the international monetary community?
Not officially. It first of all, it is no nat. Well, let me back up here. I know that El Salvador uh, made it part of its national currency basket a couple years ago, but it's not money in that sense yet. It's not part of the legacy financial system. But on the grassroots level, though, well, let's take somewhere else that is part of the English speaking world that in 1947 became independent. In India,
Hmm.
you can go to a Bitcoin exchange, buy Bitcoin rupees, and sell it for rupees. So, pretty much anywhere in the world, you can access, put your money in and get Bitcoin out, or the reverse. You also have interlinked Bitcoin wallets. So there's what's called wallet to wallet transfers. So you offer whatever it is that you have money, other cryptocurrencies. Ethereum is another big one. We won't have time to talk about it today at length. Both of those, but Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are two of the three, and Hive, three, pretty much anywhere in the world, you can use those. And if you can't get your dollar, you can trade them, or your currency, rather. Not everybody has a dollar. You can trade them to Bitcoin and then into whatever it is you need. I know people from here to Iraq, India, the Philippines, Venezuela, Argentina, Cuba, and all these people have access to either Hive or Bitcoin, and they do Hive to Bitcoin. So while no, this is not something the G7 are necessarily going to be
Hmm.
talking about,
Yeah.
wherever they hold the G7, I can almost guarantee you that there are people on the grassroots level that are using some Bitcoin, not a majority. If the masses ever figure out Bitcoin, that price, that's it's
Yeah.
almost it's just like that math is like, nope, does not compute. But I should also say here, if that does happen, just like Canadian dollars and American dollars break down to dollars and cents, Bitcoin has 100 million such divisions called Satoshis. So if you can't buy, pennies will always in Bitcoin will always be available. So even if that were to happen, and this is also why people whose currencies are not worth as much compared to ours, even in countries that the economy has collapsed, like Venezuela is pretty well collapsed,
Mm,
but people have access to Hive, and because people have access to Hive, they have access to Bitcoin twice removed.
I see.
There's a whole business district in Venezuela, in Sucre State, Venezuela, where people have made use of this reality, despite the troubles they're having in their own currency. So, although it's not on the heads of the, they know about it. They're probably a little bit afraid of it, looking at what happens with
Yeah.
regulations that come along.
Yeah.
But it's not yet a G7 type of thing. It's just, but however, it's kind of in the background. It's grassroots still. And that was sort of what it was intended to do. It was intended to be available to anyone who could master the technological aspects of it and buy it and sell it and exchange it. It's money that's available.
Hmm.
Again, I should mention this just for the sake of history. At least in the United States, because Canada had a more relaxed opinion about this. The United States has run a deficit for a long time. It had a free labor force for about 246 years. So that debt's been owed for a minute. Anyhow, it is very nice, though, for me to be able to have access to money that does not have the blood of my African and Native ancestors on it. That's the other reason why this is picking up, because it's not based on the system that ground down people for profit. This is truly money for the people to use without reference to that. If your G7 nations who know their own history um, don't count this as money because it does not qualify, but they also know that people who they will not allow historically to access their money can get this. That's an important difference. This is money that all the people of the world can access once they learn it. That's important. It reverses some things about legacy money for the past 600 years. And that's another reason that I'm passionate.
Hmm. Well, that seems like a perfect segue into my next question, and we'll certainly get back to finishing talking about this book. You've written other books that, by the title, sounds very much like what you just talked about. Do you want to just give a brief mention to some of those?
Certainly. There's two that come to mind immediately. When I was 27 years old, I noticed that my fellow musicians were being beat down by the legacy music system, which, if you compare it to the sharecropping system under Jim Crow, it's very similar. You're not allowed to read the contracts, you're not explained what they are, you sign on the dotted line, and you give everything you have away. Slavery by Another Name is a book about Jim Crow time. Well, the music industry copied a lot of that. And if you do your mathematics and you think, okay, a lot of the music industry started in Memphis and Nashville, and who those men would have been the sons of, and what those men would have had prior to 1865. Oh, y'all are doing okay. No, we can't do this. Hence,
Hmm.
the Freedom Guide for Music Creators, which was actually my first book, published in 2008. That began with a series of articles because a lot of musicians around me were making contracts and paying out money for things and having their music literally stolen from them by people who knew.
Yeah.
It was my 17-year-old cousin who got jacked up. And I looked around for a book for him to read and there was nothing. And I remember I was standing in my window just angry. And something said, well, go write it. And that has in common with this fifth book. That's basically the same thing happened. I was in explaining to a younger person what they might want to prepare to do, and then thinking, if only there was a book available that was easy to understand. And same thing happened. But in 2008, that was where the Freedom Guide for Music Creator comes from. I'm like this. I'm decent in history, and I was a professional journalist. So kind of the same kind of cycles because of the history of the world in the past 600 continue to happen over and over again. In that case, I was then in those days living my big time gospel music composer life though. And I was more involved with that then. And so that was the Freedom Guide for Music Creators. Black and White and Red all over. Book number 4, 2019. That was my response to Charlottesville. Because what I had noticed was I saw those old flags, those Confederate flags, and there was a couple of badly made Nazi ones in the middle. And those are all men my age. They're not men from, a couple hundred years ago. And they're all out here cavorting around a statue of Robert E. Lee. And I'm sitting up here like, if they continue to do what they're doing, we're going to have a recurrence of this.
Yeah.
And so Black, White, and Red Over explores what happens if you were in a little town and you were a military man who was who became a police officer. You're in the reserve. Your town's police captain died that you grew up with, and then you find out that there's going to be some kind of incident. You grew up with all these people. You believe roughly what they believe. You are perfectly good white Christian evangelical with tons of children, which is what is being pushed. You grew up with all these men, but then you get the word that, okay, there's a little black newspaper that's about to tell the truth about some stuff that's happened in policing here, and they don't want that news out, and you know that they practiced in 2017.
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you follow what is accepted, where people go and change into white robes with hoods after church? Or do you actually do what Christ would have you do? That's the decision. And, as I'm sure you're aware, what I predicted did occur in Washington on January 6th. It's actually scary to me that I was able to kind of foresee that. It's actually
Yeah.
frightening to me,
Yeah.
but it just shows you, even when I write fiction, because I'm engaged in history, because I've something I didn't say about me, I've been a community servant since I was 9. Started my first job as secretary of my Sunday school class because there weren't that many people who could do that level of math. And the person who mentored me, she was the widow of a community servant who built all this senior housing that I work with today. But she taught me how to do that early. So now I'm a secretary of the board, and she started me out on looking at, here's what the people need. Because I have been on the pulse, what am I, 40? Okay, 34 years, this rolls down into everything. Even this, at the price that it's at right now, even this is a public service. This is how I think. So almost all my books. The second book, 15 Things All Musicians Should Know, is basically the glossary on the first one. And the one in the middle was Seasoned Siblings Timeshare Tip, was a more whimsical book because the weather here is interesting. It makes some interesting photographs. That was more whimsical. That was me being relaxed. But 1, 4, and 5 are really about the same thing. Get free. This word here, green screen light right there. It's just a major toll. It follows me everywhere. It's something I'm very concerned with as an African American. And I'm not just concerned that I get free, I'm concerned that you get free also. And you can be expanded out generally. None of us, I mean, I studied feudalism. I actually understood it in high school. I'm like, wait, y'all have been like this for how long? Oh, y'all have been like this. Oh, yeah. Okay. Before that, there was like the Roman Empire. And then y'all said that all the rest of it. Oh, okay. All right. Well, Julius Caesar is gone. Beware the Ides of March. And all those people before 1865 are gone. Bye. We get free. Whatever the means we need to get free with, that's what I'm on. And if you read my books, you'll kind of pick that, all 5, you'll kind of pick that up.
Well said. Well said. So this book about crypto, is it out already?
Yes, it has been out since official launch date was October the 30th for the ebook, and the paperback has been out since November the 30th, I think.
Yeah, 2023. Are
2023,
you
yes.
able to analyze the sales and how that's going?
Well, I wrote it in the summer of 2023. Oh, you mean for the book itself? Okay,
Yeah,
picking
yeah.
up. Okay, all right. My head is back in these charts for the book itself. Picking up. I knew that putting it out there early, very few people would be paying attention. But I have a friend of mine who has a very large TikTok space, and so we did a giveaway. And in that first month, we gave away about 100 books. People picked it
Okay.
up very early. She did a good job promoting. It is picking up. Um, but what happens in the cycle is putting it out that early, nobody was going to pay attention yet. But the reason I did that, because I mentioned the date October 30th. Mathematically, if you got the book on October 30th, you have a full 2 years to the day, to the top of the cycle.
Right. Yeah.
So that would give me enough time, like I'm developing a course for this at this moment. That would give me enough time to give people at least a year and a half. That was sort of the idea. So I have a course out, not quite next month, but by May, to walk people through the book. So it's picking up. Every month I get my royalty statements, and they're boom, boom, boom. It did not hurt that Bitcoin did that massive run in late January, early February, because people are paying attention. So I anticipate as the market continues to rise and people become more aware of this, that it will continue to slope up. And then probably sometime around, unfortunately, like January of next year,
Hmm.
I have some things kind of looking at my data. I should be in the hundreds, if not the thousands, just
Okay.
by having mathematically worked out, okay, here's what I'm doing to promote it. Here's where it's available. Here's where people are going to actually become available for Bitcoin, and it'll be in these places to be seen by these people by then. But so far, it's just creeping up a little bit every month.
Yeah. And it's very timely from what I gather that they get this
Yes,
this promoted. Well, we'll make sure we'll get this on air as soon as we can for that reason. Now,
I thank
okay, let's get back and have one last push for this book of yours. I'll put you full frame and give your
you.
best
Okay,
pitch for it.
okay. If you've ever heard of Bitcoin and you wondered about what is this money, you're basically where I am, or at least where I was when I in 2019. Is this something that can assist me in being able to have the life that I want? I want you to go and pick up Season the Crypto Bull Run and Fight for Financial Freedom. I have left it at its holiday price to celebrate. It's so glad to be featured on. Tell me a bit about your book. I've left it as holiday price. It's $4.99 to download to your Kindle and $9.99 in paperback, so that you can find out what is this, and so that you do not miss this wealth creation opportunity for yourself and for your family. That is the intent for which this was written. There's enough Bitcoin, Ethereum, Hive, and all the rest for all of us. And if you're not ready to do this at this particular moment, that's okay. I'll see you in 2028, and we'll get a chance to have this opportunity again.
Well, that's a bargain. Those are really good prices. I don't see why people wouldn't order the book.
I'm trying to make it easy as possible because, like I said, I could sit here and not do anything and be fine. I don't need this book to have a nice life in 2025. I don't need it,
Okay.
but I don't want to go alone. I want people to get on this and experience and be able to make more of their life before stuff happens
Yeah.
out there.
Well, it sounds like you want to help people. It's very Christian of you to do that. So it really,
Well,
really makes
thank you.
sense. Really makes sense. Deann, it's been a nice, long, but well delivered message that you gave. And I'll make sure to get this out on YouTube as soon as possible.
I really appreciate that, John, and I thank you for your time and for choosing to host me. You have a lot of wonderful books here, and I appreciate that you chose mine to be among them.
Okay. It was a pleasure having you as a guest.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Okay, you take care now. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for watching. If you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then please consider hitting that like button and leaving a comment. You can also subscribe and ring that bell because I release 2 episodes per week, one on Wednesdays and one on Saturdays. And if you are an author, I would love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.